Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Rananda Ji, obeisances to all. Haribol.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Oh my goodness. Looks like everybody's tuning in.
Haribol Prabhu, can you hear me?
We can hear somebody.
Okay, I started start meeting for the first time.
Oh, that's wonderful. This is Harsh.
Yeah.
Harsh.
Haribol, very good. Mahalakshmi Mataji, you did it. You figured it out.
Hare Krishna.
Congratulations.
I can hear you.
You can or cannot?
I can.
Wonderful. I'm so happy you got it.
Thank you very much.
Audio. Roy Rama Prabhu, please accept our humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, please accept mine.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to hear you.
Please accept my obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Ramananda Prabhu, how are we going to work this so you know when to advance the slide?
I'm going to give you the screen.
Oh, I'm going to be able to advance the slide?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry for asking. I know we did this a long time ago, but I didn't remember how it was done.
Okay, I'm making you a presenter.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to mute everybody right now because your voice is low and there's a lot of background.
Well, that's because I'm not holding the mic up.
But should I go ahead and
now
mute
I am.
Anyway?
Yeah.
All right, hold on.
If you want to, but you got to let me know how to do this. So.
I'll be here, just everybody else will be muted.
There's an echo.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm going to get rid of it. Just 1 second. Okay, Mother Urmila, now only you and I can
live,
be
my
heard.
screen is being shared. So I should put it, okay, so right now you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can see a picture of the deity.
Is that right?
Yeah, we can see your desktop right now.
Okay, so now you can see the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay, just let me check. And okay, just want to check that I'm offline. Okay, that way nothing will bump in. All right, should we begin?
Yes,
oh, but
please,
you're going to see this. How do I get rid of this thing?
Oh, okay. If you don't need it, just collapse it. There's a chevron. Here, I'll show you mine. You see this right here? It's called the chevron. Just click that and it'll disappear.
Chevron here?
Oh, I can't see it because yours is hidden.
Oh, I don't know what to do. I can't see anything of yours.
Do you see my meeting dashboard right here?
No.
No, okay. Hold on just 1 second.
Okay.
I'm going to take back the screen.
Okay.
Now I'm going to start meeting. Okay, now I'm going to show you. Now you got one of these, right? Meeting dashboard?
Yeah.
Okay, you see this button right here, the chevron?
Yeah.
You click that on your side and it'll disappear.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, now I got to give you back the screen. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. All right, now we see your screen. We're recording, and there's many devotees on right now. So I'll mute myself when we're ready to go.
Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Asatara Satashi Shrimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Gangamaya Jamuna Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nima Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharna Nivasvesa Samurai Paskacharya Satana. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sargajatam Sahagana Raghunakam Vikam Sam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vikamscha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's August 17th, 2013, Hilo, Hawaii, class over Skype. We're going to be looking at Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 12. This is a three-part class. Today we're looking at texts 1 through 7. So I'm just going to go through and read the translations of 1 through 7. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engage in the welfare of all at last achieve me. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engage in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So here's an overview of the three parts of the seminar. Part 1, which we're going to be doing today, is an overview of the two paths to perfection. For each path, we're going to look at what are the goals of that path, what is the process of that path, what do you do, what is the nature of the path, and what does it feel like, and what do you experience when you're going on the path, what are your qualifications for taking up the path, and how do you become delivered. Then in part 2, we're going to see how the paths fit together. What are the relationships of the paths to each other? And in part 3, we're going to see the qualities of those who've reached at least the threshold of bhakti. Now, I see that this chapter 12 is extremely important because it really differentiates between pure bhakti and mixed bhakti, between the direct path and the indirect path, and gives us, in very few verses, in a very short and concise way, the essence of how to practice pure bhakti. When we study this chapter, we'll see that one of the impediments on the path of devotional service is when people aren't really doing devotional service. Now, Prabhupada said that if you eat a meal, you should feel satisfied. He said if you're not feeling satisfied, then either you're not really eating or there's parasites in your belly. And he said similarly, in performing Krishna consciousness, one should be achieving the result, and if not, then the possibilities are that you're not really performing Krishna consciousness, or that there are some offenses. So here in this presentation, we're not looking at offenses, but we're looking at, are we really on the path? Is what we're doing actually bhakti, or is it something else? If we're doing actually bhakti, how does that work? The other thing we're going to be looking at in this understanding of chapter 12, and this will be primarily in the second part, will be what are the stages of bhakti and how do we progress from one stage to another. And it's going to be a little different analysis than we usually find in the Shraddha Prema. We're going to be focusing on some different aspects. So in part 1 today, we're going to be examining, am I really in pure bhakti? Am I really doing the process? What is the process? What should I be experiencing on the path? In part 2, we're going to be looking at, on the path of pure bhakti, what are my signposts? What are my landmarks? And what is it that's not pure bhakti? Especially in part 2, we're going to be examining the place of varnashram in bhakti and how to relate to people doing other systems of yoga, how to preach to people who are engaged in yoga. Then part 3 is one of my favorite parts of any of the Shastra. It's the description of how a devotee is dear to Krishna by having achieved a preliminary threshold on the path of bhakti. And it really gives us a litmus test for how we're progressing. It also gives us a key for how do I know I'm pleasing Krishna? One of the big questions devotees ask. How do I know that Krishna is pleased? So that we'll be looking at in part 3. All right, part 1, texts 1 through 7, which we read. So the goal, the overall goal of either path, oh, I should say before we begin to really get into these verses, that this presentation is based, of course, primarily on Srila Prabhupada's translations and purports. It's also based to a large extent on the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vijayabhushan. So you'll find that in this presentation we're quoting, and the person that I'm quoting is mentioned in parentheses on each slide. So it's either going to say Prabhupada, Vishwanath, or Baladev. So that's referring to where we're looking at. Are we looking at Srila Prabhupada's purports? Are we looking at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary? Or are we looking at Baladev Vijayabhushan's commentary? Of course, they're all, as we would expect, in harmony. However, each of them, being a different individual, has their personal nuances, shall we say, to understanding. And we are also looking, to some extent, beyond just the Bhagavad Gita, to Srila Prabhupada's referencing these verses in his lectures or referencing these verses in other purports. Occasionally, we're also going to be going to other Prabhupada purports and lectures where Prabhupada doesn't directly reference these verses, but he's discussing the same points that are made in these verses. Okay. So the main goal of both of the paths outlined in chapter 12 is ultimately the spiritual loving service for Shyamasundar Sundar. I was just listening to a lecture a couple days ago where Prabhupada says all of us have as our goal a relationship with Krishna as a servant, as a friend, as a parent, or as a lover. So this is our ultimate goal of the spiritual process which we are performing. And there are two paths. Basically, Arjuna's question in text 1 is saying, what's the best way to attain devotional service, to Shama Sundar? What is the best way to achieve this ultimate perfection of realizing who I am? Should I engage in bhakti from the beginning, or should I go through a step-by-step process that leads to bhakti? And I really want to emphasize that this question is not only relevant for those who are not part of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, or those who are not part of one of the Vaishnava Sanghas or part of ISKCON, but this question is very relevant even for those who believe that they are in bhakti from the beginning. And that there are many times when we find devotees who mistake Gyan Mishra Bhakti or Karma Mishra Bhakti for pure bhakti. It's a very subtle thing, and Rupa Goswami talks about this as far as weeds that look just like the creeper of bhakti and may be mistaken for the creeper of bhakti, and we may be watering those weeds instead of watering the plant of bhakti. So it's quite frequently that I run into devotees, people who are followers of Srila Prabhupada, who are preaching Karma Mishra Bhakti or Gyan Mishra Bhakti without realizing it, or who are even preaching this indirect path without realizing it. So the distinction between the two is rather important. And again, we're going to get into that in a general way in this part, and a much more detailed way in the second part. So let's look at the two paths right now. We're going to look at them separate from each other. So I'm not exactly going in the order of the verses. I'm taking these 7 verses as a whole and dividing them up, sort of reorganizing them into looking at the two paths separately. So let's look at bhakti from the beginning. We already know the goal. The goal is loving service to Shama Sundar. That's the direct goal. It's the ultimate goal, and it is also the immediate goal. It's not a long-term goal, and that this is going to be an important distinction, because in the other path there is another intermediate goal. So we're going to go here in direct by bhakti right to the process. So in text 2, Krishna says the process is my aveshya mano, to fix your mind on Shama Sundar. That is the process of bhakti. That is the process of bhakti. So Rupa Goswami, when giving the definition of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, the very beginning of bhakti, he says that the most essential principle is to always remember Krishna and never forget him, and that anything else is a servant of that. So the process of bhakti is absorption of the consciousness in Shama Sundar. How? Shradaya Paraya. So absorption in Shama Sundar with faith. That if I just simply absorb my consciousness in Shama Sundar, then I will achieve all perfection. And this faith is not faith in the modes. In chapter 17 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes faith in the mode of goodness, faith in the mode of passion, faith in the mode of ignorance. So the type of faith that's required for engagement in bhakti is a transcendental faith. A faith that I am a soul, I am not trying to achieve some sort of liberation, I'm not trying to achieve some sort of material sense gratification, but I'm really trying to achieve a reciprocation of love. And then that was referring to internal. So far what we've looked at, to always be absorbed in Shama Sundar, and to always be absorbed in Shama Sundar with faith, is referring to our inner state of consciousness. But what about external? What do we do? Nitya yukta upasate. To be always worshipping Shama Sundar. So here we have a picture of yagya and arti paraphernalia, and indeed one may engage in that kind of worship. One may engage in worship of the deity form. One may engage in worship of the holy name through Harinam Sankirtan, through Harinam Japa, through Mahamantra Japa, through Gayatri Japa. One may engage in worship through studying the Shastra, as we are doing right now, through teaching the Shastra, through visiting holy places, through serving the sadhus. So one may always engage in worship like that. This nitya yukta upasate doesn't necessarily mean that all day long, 24 hours a day, you are engaged in an artik ceremony, but you're engaged in some direct worship of Nam Guna Rupa Lila, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here we have on the level of the mind and heart and the level of the body, thinking, feeling, willing. So one's thoughts absorbed in Krishna, one's feelings and emotions absorbed in Krishna, with a mood of transcendental faith, one's working senses and knowledge-acquiring senses always engaged in worship. So far this description sounds like a very monastic life. If we say one is always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and one is always engaged in worshiping Krishna, one may envision here is a person that's away from the general population. They're living in a holy place. They're studying the scriptures. They're chanting for many hours a day. They're worshiping the deity. It seems to be someone not absorbed in the world. But here, Prabhupada is talking about on a general level that this always engaged in worship doesn't only mean that one is just sitting in the temple room. Prabhupada says the devotee does not desire any achievement other than pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His life's mission is to please Krishna. So this is also related to mood with anything. And this point again cannot be stressed enough, because it's not simply that one is always thinking of Krishna, and it's not simply that one has the goal of loving service to Krishna, and it's not simply that one has transcendental faith, and it's not simply that one is always engaged in some worship, but one's goal is simply to please Krishna. That's interesting. Just the other day, I was reading a lovely letter from Srila Prabhupada to George Harrison, where he was saying that Krishna becomes pleased when he sees that the devotee is feeling happy in service. Now, how interesting. Sometimes devotees, as I say here, we're really going to be looking at misconceptions of bhakti. So sometimes devotees feel that the gauge of their bhakti is how miserable they feel in their service. They think, well, if I enjoy my service, if I'm getting pleasure from my service, then it must be sense gratification rather than bhakti. But that's not accurate. And indeed, we'd have to really think deeply about what kind of a God we were worshiping if his pleasure was to see us miserable in his service. If you just kind of think about that for a minute, if you had someone who was serving you, let's say you hired someone to clean your house once a week or something like that, someone's doing a favor for you, and if your pleasure was to see that they were really unhappy doing it, or if your pleasure was to have them do some service that they really hated, you asked them, what do you like and what do you not like, and they told you, and you said, okay, whatever you do for me, don't do anything that you enjoy. Only do things that you don't like. What kind of a person would that be? I think we'd call that an evil person. I don't think that would be a very nice person. And of course, it wouldn't even be very self-serving, because if you engage people in things that they don't like and they're miserable at, they're not going to do a very good job. And so even if you are demoniac, you're going to want to engage people in things that they enjoy. You'd have to be a really low level of demon, somebody like a Hitler or a Stalin, where you put people in labor camps and you force them to do things that they hate, and you want them to be as miserable as possible. You basically see them as expendable, disposable entities that you're going to work until they keel over dead. So this is not Krishna's view. As we say, even somebody who's very materialistic and selfish will engage people according to their natures and propensities and their likes. So generally, if somebody is serving us, we want them to enjoy serving us. We don't want them to serve us at their expense. We want them to be happy serving us. And you see this in ordinary family life, where the wife will say, oh, I'd like to go to the park today. And the husband says, well, okay, if you want to go, I'll go. And she says, well, don't go just because I want to go. I want you to go because you want to go. We feel uncomfortable if people are serving us with, how would you say, resistance. So Krishna's happiness is seeing that we are happy in his service. And we will get to in part 3 what is the behavior and attitude of the devotee that is most pleasing to Krishna? That's the last few verses of this chapter. If our mood is to please Krishna, if our life's mission, as Prabhupada's saying here, is to please Krishna, Krishna gives a list in this chapter. This is what's pleasing to me. This is what's pleasing to me. This is what's pleasing to me. And that's all the devotee wants. That is love. That is love. The devotee just wants that Krishna will be pleased. Now here we have one of my favorite quotes in Srila Prabhupada's books. And it really helps us understand that pure bhakti is not just a monastic process of people who are separate from society. This is in the purport to 12.2. Prabhupada says, sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does, he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. And the one here that strikes me is going to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna. In other words, one is not simply in the temple. Whatever one is doing, one is thinking, how is Krishna pleased? How is Krishna pleased? How is Krishna pleased? Am I happy in my service? And am I the kind of person that Krishna describes later in this chapter, which makes Krishna smile? All right, so we've looked at the process. What do I do if I'm in pure bhakti? What's the goal of pure bhakti, and what do I do? Now, if we're on the path of bhakti, what will our experience be? What is the nature of the path? You know, if you think of this as a journey, so if we say, okay, the way you're going to go from Munich to Paris, can you go by plane? Can you go by train? Can you go by car? So you might say, what is the goal? The goal is Paris. What is the process? The process is I have to buy a ticket, I have to pack a suitcase, I have to go to the airport, I have to go to the check-in line. That's the process, what I do. Then what's the nature of the path? What will it feel like? So if we say, okay, if you're on a plane, what it's going to feel like, you're going to be in a little cramped seat and your ears are going to pop and so forth. If you're going to train, you're going to have a much more comfortable seat, you're going to see all the scenery and so forth. So the nature of the path is a little bit different from the process. The nature of the path is what kind of experience will you have when you're doing that process. So here Srila Prabhupada describes, and Krishna describes, that the nature of the path of direct bhakti, done from the very beginning of one's spiritual life, from day one, is very easy and natural. And Prabhupada gives this example in his purport to text 5, that we can worship the deity with our material senses. We can have the deity as the king of our home, the king of the temple, and it's very easy to understand. You know, I offer my food to the deity. I give the deity a report of my financial expenditures. I consider that everything in the home belongs to the deity. And that's a very easy and natural thing to do. One can understand that. Just like one may be living in someone else's house. So I travel a lot. I'm often living in other people's homes. And it's very easy for me to understand that the home belongs to someone else. I am staying in their home. And what I am doing has to be pleasing to them. Everything has to be in accord with their desires. Or what to speak of if you're a servant. So if you've ever been in society where there's servants, or been where there's servants, so the servant also has a room in the house, the servant has their servants' quarters, but they are very aware that everything is for the pleasure of the owner of the house. The servants first serve the owners of the house,